After a global pandemic, increased divisiveness, and a worsening economy, it really is no surprise that more and more people are stressed nowadays. And this isn't a speculative notion. Indeed, since COVID, people have had increased stress levels as well as more mental health diagnoses, in large part due to the economy. And according to one study I found, around 20% of people in the US have symptoms of anxiety and depression. This is quite a lot. And stress really impacts a wide range of things in your day-to-day life. Many facets are affected. And although this sounds like very, very grim news, that's why I'm here today. I'm here to help. I am going to give you a lot of the tools to treat stress, as well as explain how stress works in the body. This is Health Reframed. My name is Jack Snyder. I run this podcast, and I am an EMT. I've been working in healthcare for around 4 years now. And today, our topic is stress and how to deal with it, and really how we can reframe how we think about stress, hence the name Health Reframed. So, without further ado, let's get into stress. What is stress, right? We've all heard of it. And in a word, I have my definition here. Stress is a state of hyperarousal to address a challenge that requires a psychological, physiological, and behavioral change. Now, in other words, when you get stressed, you have to react in a way that really incorporates your whole body, your mind, your cognition, your strength, your muscles, your hormones, nervous system, really head to toe of everything. And this makes sense, given that normally when we get stressed out, we need to address something, right? So if we get stressed out about something in the jungle coming to attack us or a test, it behooves us to prepare all of our body systems to get ready for that thing, even if it might not be a physical threat. And at a general level, your body controls stress in one of two ways. You have a fast response system and a slow response system. So going back to our analogy earlier about the monkey, we were monkeys in the jungle, and a snake appears, the fast response system is what is going to deal with this. But before we get into this, we have to explain a little bit about the autonomic nervous system. You all have heard me talk about this many times before. Your body has a lot of automatic things that go on. Your body digests food by itself. It pumps your heart by itself. And these sort of things are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. And this nervous system has two branches of its own. You have the sympathetic branch and the parasympathetic branch. Now, the sympathetic branch is your fight or flight branch. This is what gets activated in periods of stress. So if you are afraid or you see that snake, this is the system that gets turned on. And we'll break it down real quick in a moment what this does. And the other system, just for sake of completion, the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. This is what is active when you are actively digesting food or resting, as the name implies. So let's talk a little bit more about the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system, mainly what we're going to talk about today, is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis. So the sympathetic nerves release adrenaline, and adrenaline is known as epinephrine. So this is a hormone released by your adrenal glands, and it really amps up a lot of different things in the body. So some of these effects, I just have them listed here: increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, increased blood flow to muscles, increased production of glucose for energy, and oxygen consumption. Now, all of these things are going to make you more alert, more focused, and more able to address whatever thing is challenging you at the moment. If you see a snake, it is very important that you are super amped up in case you need to run or you need to fight it if it's something bigger than a snake. And the sympathetic nervous system here with norepinephrine and adrenaline and epinephrine is going to allow you to do this better. Now, the issue, of course, arises when this is chronic and it is activated long term. Now, I did misspeak earlier. Forgive me for that. So the slow stress response system involves the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, so the HPA axis. Or no, sorry, I got that wrong. The HPA axis is the epinephrine. It's just downstream. The epinephrine is released by the adrenal glands, and that's the last thing to be released in that chain. We'll get into that in a moment and break it down more. So the slow stress response system involves the release of stress hormones over time if you're chronically stressed. So let me explain how this works. So it starts in the amygdala. The amygdala is part of your brain that deals with emotions. So if you're having negative emotions, for instance, your amygdala is going to light up and tell your body to do something about it. Now, from here, the amygdala communicates with the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is the master gland. Some of you may have heard the pituitary is the master gland, but the pituitary releases a lot of the hormones, but the hypothalamus tells the pituitary gland what to release. And in this instance, what the hypothalamus is telling the pituitary to release is corticotropin releasing hormone. So this is released by the hypothalamus and it goes to the pituitary. And the corticotropin releasing hormone, unsurprisingly, causes adrenocorticotropic hormone to be released from the pituitary gland. So we have the hypothalamus telling the pituitary gland to release a hormone, and that hormone is the adrenocorticotropic hormone. So this hormone eventually finds its way to the adrenal glands once again. So the adrenal glands, if you remember earlier, released epinephrine, and this caused the fast response to occur. The slow response occurs via this HPA axis, and the adrenocorticotropic hormone goes to the adrenal glands and eventually releases cortisol. Now, cortisol has many effects in the body. Again, here's my list. It reduces inflammation, increases blood glucose, and suppresses the immune system. So these things don't sound great, and cortisol is here for a reason. It can improve your functioning if you are in a short period of prolonged stress, but if that period gets to be longer, and this is a chronic thing, that is where we run into issues. So over time, cortisol can have a slew of negative effects. It can cause weight gain, acne, fatigue, high blood pressure, irritability. All of these things are not good long term. And it can also decrease serotonin levels, which can impact your mood. Many of you will have heard of serotonin. Serotonin is like the positive mood hormone. And if it decreases the levels of that, then your mood is going to be in a lower state. Think about antidepressant drugs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. They cause more serotonin to be available in the synapses of your nerves. And the thinking here is that this will improve your mood if you're depressed or anxious, because serotonin has a uplifting mood effect. So a lot of this doesn't sound great, but like I said, stress can play very important roles. It can be a very important thing. It can help you feel more focused, more prepared to face a threat. And even if that threat is something like a test in school, this can be to your benefit a lot of the time. And it can keep you prepared for a period of time with hormones. The week leading up to the test, you might be a little stressed about it, but this will light a fire under your ass, so to speak, so that you will study. So it can have good effects. Now, of course, the issue is that if these systems are always turned on, then we are going to run into some problems. So what are these problems? So one of the less obvious ways that stress impacts you, if it's chronic, is that it can reduce brain size. It can cause brain atrophy. So the two primary areas where this happens are the hippocampus and the amygdala. So like I said earlier, the amygdala is important in emotion, and the hippocampus is important for memory formation. So what this means functionally is that the ability to form declarative memories, spatial memories, verbal memories, all of the memory stuff are going to be negatively impacted if your hippocampus decreases in size. Think of it like stress causes your hippocampus to decrease in size. Your hippocampus controls memory formation, so you're going to have a more difficult time forming memories, memorizing things along those lines. And decrease of size in these areas can also cause emotional regulation disorders and cognitive disorders. Your cognitive function can go down. And I want to pause here because this is a big deal, right? Stress is something we all deal with somewhat frequently, and the fact that it can reduce our brain size and cause these very negative effects is something that we really need to be aware of, because I think if you're aware of the negative something can cause, it can sort of inspire you to help manage it better. So unfortunately, brain atrophy is just the start of the effects that stress has that are negative. And like I said earlier, with cortisol can cause your immune system to be suppressed. So obviously, this is going to have bad effects long-term. Your immune system is, by and large, what protects you from viruses, bacteria, these sort of invaders that get into your body. And if your immune system is suppressed because of cortisol, then you're going to get sick more often. You're not going to be able to fight off infections as well, these sort of things. And stress can even decrease certain amount of specific immune cells and lead to tumor growth. So very bad things. And already, right, we're looking at increased risk of cancer, increased risk of getting infections, literal brain shrinkage. So the effects that stress have that are negative is really, really long, unfortunately. I'll keep listing them out here. So heart health is a big deal with stress, and stress can really be a killer here. Stress-mediated activation of the sympathetic nervous system can have really bad effects on the heart. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned that the sympathetic nervous system is activated when you're stressed, and this has a lot of effects on the heart. And again, in the moment, it can be good, but long-term, not so much, right? When you're chronically stressed, the system is turned on all the time. This is bad news for the heart. It can increase heart rate, increase blood pressure, increase blood fats, and blood clotting disorders. And this can be dangerous because it can lead to things like arrhythmias, heart attacks, strokes, and so on and so forth. And arrhythmias, just to define that term, is when your heart isn't beating properly. So normally it's supposed to go lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. An arrhythmia would look something like lub-dub, 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 just a rhythm of the heart that is abnormal in effect. And stress can also cause plaque to build up in your arteries. So I think I mentioned that, it increases blood fats. So plaque in your arteries, you can think of it like over time, your arteries are tubes, and you want those tubes to be clear so the blood can flow. And if you have fats starting to collect in these tubes, it can make blood harder to flow through those. And if the fat totally closes off the artery, so it totally fills it in, then this can actually cause a heart attack. Or if a piece of this fat breaks off, it can cause strokes and heart attacks as well, because that's a big thing traveling through your arteries, and it can block an artery, and that can be bad news. Something that isn't always talked about stress is the fact that stress can lead you to behaviors that aren't healthy. So stress can cause you to be unhealthy physiologically, and it can also cause you to do things that are unhealthy. So if you're stressed a lot of people will seek out stress-induced risky behaviors. This is going to be things like drugs, alcohol, and this can turn all of these problems from really bad to worse, because if your body and your physiology is starting to suffer from stress and you're throwing drugs and alcohol into the mix, it's going to make all these problems quite a lot worse. Stress also affects the GI system. Increased stress can impact appetite, which can cause either anorexia or weight gain, so it can go either way. It can prevent stomach emptying, change how food is absorbed, and cause GI inflammation. All of these are going to have really bad effects in terms of how food is absorbed and how you feel day to day. You are what you eat, and if you're eating good but your body can't process it, then you're still not going to feel too great. And I think what we're starting to see here is that stress affects the whole body, and all of these systems are very much intertwined, and stress doesn't just affect one of them, it affects all of them, and they all feed in on each other, and the effects can start to pile up and be additive, which isn't good, because one system is bad, but all of the systems together, that can cause really bad effects over time. And these are but some of the few effects, negative effects of stress. I could keep listing them, but I think you all get the general idea here. Stress is bad, and it can cause a lot of bad things to happen inside of your body. And this sounds very grim, but again, that's why I'm here. Let's get into what you can actually do to manage stress effectively so that you don't have these problems, or that you can mitigate them and just feel better. Because besides all of the physiological stuff, being stressed, it just doesn't feel good. You're not particularly happy or calm, relaxed, content, these sort of things when you're stressed. So let's get into how to manage it. Thankfully, there are a lot of ways that you can manage stress. While I was researching this episode, I came across one that I think pretty much covers a lot of the main ways. There's a lot of methods, but I think this one hits most of the marks here, and it is the BERN method, B-E-R-N, and each letter has a meaning. It's an acronym. So let's break it down. So the B stands for behavior, and these are changes to make in your life that are behavior changes, seeking out more social support, creativity, therapy, activities that you enjoy doing, love, friendship. And in my opinion, these are some of the strongest ways that you can alleviate stress. And I'll talk more a bit on this, but I think oftentimes, especially in this day and age, we're chronically stressed because we're lacking some of these essential things in life. We're lacking the friendship, we're lacking the camaraderie, the communities, the love, and getting outside and doing what we really want to do, the things that we enjoy doing. And unsurprisingly, adding them back helps significantly with stress. If you can add the friendship, the community, the hobbies, this can help to severely lower your stress, which is a good thing. And I think this one, starting out behavior, is really important because at the end of the day, stress can be very well managed with behavior changes. And it's good news because you have the agency to actually do this in your life. You have the agency to change your behaviors, even if it is slow over time. And oftentimes stress can feel unavoidable, like it's something that's overbearing happening to you that you can't do anything about. But these studies and these methods have been proven and shown to help ameliorate stress. And again, even if it's small steps, stress might be this behemoth monster that you're fighting, but one step at a time, you can actually come to wrangle it in and overcome it. Next is E, exercise. Talk about exercise a lot on this podcast, and for a good reason. Exercise affects everything in your body positively, pretty much. Exercise is good for everything from heart health to slowing down Alzheimer's and, unsurprisingly, to reducing stress. Exercise releases a lot of hormones, a lot of endorphins, so they're called, after you exercise, which make you feel really good. So even in that short period of time, it can help you feel better, and it can increase blood flow to the brain and improve health just in general. And given that health is likely a large stressor for many people being stressed about their health, how they feel, they might be overweight or underweight, they might have poor blood work or just poor health in general, I think exercise can help in this regard. It's a multiplicative effect, if you will. If you exercise, then you're going to feel better because of the exercise, but you're also going to start to look better, and you're going to start to have better blood work and just be healthier overall, which is going to make you less stressed. So exercise is great, multiplicative effects, in my opinion. So exercise. I have a whole episode on exercise if you guys want to check that out too, where I break down the best ways to exercise and that sort of thing. Next is relaxation. A lot of us struggle with relaxation, especially because we are so stressed, but stress and relaxation are kind of opposed to each other. So if you can find ways to relax, then this can help reduce your stress. And first and foremost here with relaxation is sleep, because sleep is the base relaxation. This is how our body as a whole relaxes. It's how our systems relax. It's how our brain relaxes. And it's really important. It's important for everything, kind of like exercise. Exercise, sleep, and diet are some of the biggest things you can do for any health or mental problems you're having. And sleep is huge. Get the 7 to 9.5 hours of sleep per night. Make sure you have a consistent schedule, reducing blue light, all of these things that I'm sure you guys have heard of a million times, and I'm just harping on them again to remind you, because they are truly so important. Sleep has really, really broad effects, and I think we could probably all benefit from better sleep. And like exercise, quality sleep may improve other areas of your life, making you less stressed about those. If you're stressed about being tired every day because you don't get enough sleep, then if you get good sleep, that'll solve that problem. And other relaxation techniques that are really effective here are going to be things like meditation, prayer, spirituality. I have an episode on meditation, and meditation is just truly, truly amazing. It has profound effects on your brain and body. It literally rewires your brain, so make sure to check that out. And then prayer and spirituality, I know that may sound woo-woo to some of you, but it's been found, and many people can attest, that it makes you feel a lot more connected to God, the universe, or really whatever you believe in. It's almost a form of meditation in a way, and it's also kind of a form of journaling in a way. You're getting your thoughts out there. You're asking the questions. You're making a lot of the things you're stressed about perhaps a little bit more concrete in your head. And as well, journaling is phenomenal. Getting the things out of your head and onto paper can help prevent the loops from forming, because oftentimes we think about the same things over and over and over again in a day, and that can make us stress. But if we can just think about it once, get it down on paper, look at it, and judge it based from there, and then put it aside, then perhaps we can think about these things less and put our mind at ease a little bit. And finally, we have N for nutrition. Unsurprisingly, talk about this a lot. Nutrition is super important. Check out my episode with Parker Nelson, nutritionist. We go into a lot of really, really actionable, practical techniques on how to improve your diet and your nutrition. But you are what you eat, and the kind of fuel that you put into your body is really, really important because, again, like sleep and exercise, it affects everything. So fueling yourself with good foods, eating well, it can have very positive effects on health and stress. In broad strokes here, eat a variety of foods. Eat fruits, vegetables, lean meats, some grains, rice, maybe some breads. These things won't kill you. The big things I think to stay away from are really processed food, eating out, making sure that the foods you eat are things that you like, because if you're just eating chicken, rice, and broccoli every day with no seasonings or anything, you're probably going to get sick of that really quickly. So find things that you like to eat and find healthy foods and see where you can meet in the middle a little bit. Portion sizes are also really important. This was something I talked about with Parker quite extensively, and portion sizes are something that a lot of people get trapped in because you think you're having one serving of cereal or one serving of coffee creamer, and maybe you're having 3, 4, or 5. So you're confused as to why you're maybe not losing weight or your nutrition isn't as good as it should be, when it may just be as simple as you need to cut down the serving sizes and be more in line with those, as well as eating fruits, vegetables, lean meats. Dairy is good. And what I like to do is the aisles of the grocery store are generally things that you want to avoid, and the edges of the grocery store are generally things that are going to be a little bit better for you. Think the fruits, the produce section are on the sides, the dairy is on the sides, the meats are on the sides, and what's in the aisles, it's going to be processed food, chips, and pre-made foods. There's some things good in the aisles, like rice, some cereals are good, grains, these sort of things, perhaps bread, not too much bread, but broad strokes, less processed food, more whole foods. And this is all well and good, and as many of you know, I'd like to give the advice, the protocols, but what's really more important to me is how do you actually mentally bring yourself to doing these things? It's very easy to understand, I need to do this, I need better sleep, I need to eat better, I need to go to the gym and exercise, I need to do cardio weights, yada, 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 yada. But how do you actually start the process? Because for most people, taking big steps in the beginning can lead to burnout or failure very quickly. All you have to do is go to the gym on January 1st and then January 7th. However, sustainable approaches where you take small incremental steps and do things that your mind can handle, these are going to be a lot more sustainable long term. And this leads us into an important philosophical reframe in stress. And it's easy to think of things making us stressed. The world is making me stressed. My roommates are making me stressed, and so on. However, these things are stressors. Whether or not we get stressed due to the stressor is by and large how we react to the stressor. And this is a very stoic philosophy, and I think it can be very applicable with stress because they accepted that shit happens in life and bad things can happen to you, but we can choose how we react and we can choose how we feel about these things, and this can be up to us. It can be, and of course, this takes a lot of practice. If a bad thing happens to you, perhaps you should actually be stressed about it. You should mourn it. You should be upset about it, but you shouldn't let it control you, so to speak. And especially with the smaller things in life that tend to stress us out. Think social media, or an angry driver on the road, or just someone making a comment that didn't sit well with you. These things don't particularly have that much of an impact on us at the end of the day. So seeing them as stressors and understanding what they are and understanding what happens when we react to them. This is, again, where meditation can be super useful. If you're going to work on your mind, then taking the time to actually observe your mind and put a pause on it and listen to your thoughts and being able to label them and understand them, see them, and then release them if you need to can be super, super helpful. And this sort of intervention isn't purely speculation. MBSR, or Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, is a 2-month program, and it focuses on developing mindfulness skills within a group to reduce stress. And it's been shown, as a paper by Kriekhaus and colleagues show, to reduce physiological and experimental effects of anxiety and depression. So this stuff does actually work pretty well. Now, this approach is very intense. It's a 2-week-long retreat kind of thing where you're in a group. But I think even just daily meditation exercises or daily-ish meditation exercises to become more mindful can have similar effects and do a lot of good for you. And again, I don't say this flippantly. This is far from simple. You can't just snap your fingers and suddenly become a guru monk who's never stressed about anything and is cool as a cucumber. It takes a lot of practice, and we're constantly contending with the world and our minds, and these things are at odds with each other, and they're fighting, and sometimes it feels like we're just watching from afar, and these things are happening to us. I really do understand. And this is where we take the small effect, or the small steps forward to shape our minds and the world around us. It's no easy task, but it can be done. Often it feels like your mind has a will of its own. It runs on its own schedule, and it's going to keep cranking forward no matter what you will. But separate from our own will, something bad happens, you get very stressed, you think to yourself, why am I so stressed? I know rationally that this is not a big deal, but it feels like this stress is just happening to me. And given that it isn't a big deal, obviously, why does this happen to us? How can we remediate it? Learning to direct your thoughts, having agency inside of your own head, and knowing how to put a spoke in the wheels of negative thought patterns, including stress, it all begins with mindfulness. Think about if you had a car and there was a click in the engine of this car, and you just let the click go, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And eventually it turns out something drastic is wrong with your car and you need a $4,000 repair. And perhaps the reason that it went so wrong is because you didn't address what was going wrong. You didn't pop the hood open, you didn't learn about it, you didn't take it to the shop, whatever it may be. And the same is in your mind. If you have this thing that continues to nag or bug you and you just let it go indefinitely, then it's going to cause bigger and bigger problems over time. And this kind of internal agency is vital for self-growth. This is a health channel. I try to educate you guys about health things, talk about the physiology, the nervous system, these sort of things. But fundamentally, I want what's best for all of you. I want you all to improve your health. I think we all have steps that we could take to make our health just a little bit better. And I think it's important to know the science and such behind these things for that. But I also think it's important to know about the mindset side of things. After all, you can know all the science in the world, all of the protocols, but if you don't have the mindset to change, then it's going to be really difficult to implement them. And another pervasive problem with anxiety and stress is that so often people make it a part of their identity. I am stressed. I am anxious. These are innate parts of me that seemingly cannot change. And I think this is a big issue I have with many of the people nowadays, and the culture around stress and anxiety is it's something to accept in yourself. And sure, I think it can be very useful to accept, okay, I have this problem with stress. I have this problem with anxiety, but that doesn't mean that I am at the will of my stress. I'm at the will of my anxiety, and there's nothing I can do over it. I think there's a lot that we can do over it, and it's really important because I think it's very empowering to do this. And if you don't accept that you have some power over it, then if you just say that it is a part of me, it's part of my identity, it's rather disempowering, in my opinion. The true empowerment lies in providing the tools to let you invent or reinvent yourself and truly decide how you feel and act. A paper by Worthen and Cash talked about mindfulness is predictive of coping with stress and having better health outcomes. In it, they explain that although trait mindfulness is partially genetically inherited, there's a great capacity for people to learn mindfulness. In other words, yes, there may be a genetic component, there may be something innate inside of you that makes you have a tendency to be more stressed and anxious, but there is also a great deal of environmental change and a great deal of agency you have over the genetics that you've been dealt, over the mind that you've been dealt, so to speak. In other words, change is possible, and much of the time, we are not wholly at the mercy of our genes. However, sometimes these things are not fully enough to put stress to rest, and at that point, it's a good idea to seek out professional help, be it therapy or medications. It depends on your individual situation. This is something to talk with your medical doctor about or your therapist. After all, there are periods of time and certain biologies and brain cocktails that make people very, very susceptible to stress, and these are indeed best treated by professionals who know how to deal with it and who know your individual situation. Stress in today's world is all over the place. People are stressed about everything from the economy to the climate to increased corporatization of really everything. And furthermore, social media and the 24-hour news cycle have been feeding us the information and the content that is most inflammatory. The things that capture our attention the most are the most inflammatory. The things that make us have the strongest negative emotions, because those are the things that capture our attention. We do have a negativity bias, and the algorithms on social media and the 24-hour news cycle, they know this. They show us things that make us have these strong emotions because they do capture our attention. And it seems nearly impossible to open up your phone or turn on the TV without seeing something that makes you stressed. But I think this is another place where we can have an important reframe. So oftentimes, the things we stress about are not things that, one, we can affect, or B, even affect us. Now, I'll break this down. This is not to say that many things that people stress about aren't actually important. I think that a lot of the things that people stress about are important, but it's easy to overblow them. And I think a lot of times we need to understand them and put them in a more proper place inside of our brains. So take the economy, right? It's April of 2025, and as many of you know, the economy has been in better shape before. And disregarding the reasons why, we can take a step back here and ask ourselves two questions. Can I change this? And how much is this impacting me? Now, I know these sound like loaded questions and like I'm going to be insensitive or say that the economy isn't affecting people, and obviously it is. Many people are severely impacted by the economic crisis that we've been going through, and I think it's very important to come up with solutions for everyone in this regard. Now that said, with the economy, the can I change this question is pretty much no. Unfortunately, the economy can't exactly be changed by one person, and unfortunately, we are, by and large, at the whim of wherever the economy takes us. However, the is this impacting me question is certainly yes. We are all impacted by the economy to differing degrees. Some people are impacted a lot, some people are impacted just a little bit, but we are all impacted. However, in the process of figuring out the best way to handle it in your own life, I think it's pertinent to consider whether or not stressing about it helps. It's perfectly natural to stress about some things, don't get me wrong. And with a lot of things, including the economy, in my opinion, I think it's a lot better to look at it pragmatically. There's an old saying out there that says, stress is like suffering twice. You're already suffering because the economy is suffering. And if you're worrying about it, then you're causing this slew of physiological and mental side effects to make this problem a lot worse. So I think looking at it pragmatically as a problem to solve, something that you can work towards in your own life to make better for yourself. You may not be able to fix the economy as a whole, but you can take steps in your own life to improve your personal economic situation. And in doing so, in taking out the stress side of things to the best of your ability, you can free up more space to actually solve the problem in your own life. Because if you're chronically stressing about something that you can't necessarily control on a broad scale, then it's going to be very, very difficult to take control of it in your own life. And in my own life and in many other people's lives, this again is going to require a great deal of stoicism. I think an old prayer here sums up what I'm getting at pretty nicely. Give me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The idea here is that things that are out of your control ideally should not concern you, as if they do concern you, it's that suffering twice idea again. There is something bad happening and it's outside of your control, like the economy. You suffer once for the effects of that, but if you stress and worry about it incessantly, then you suffer twice. Once for the thing and once for the actual worrying about the thing. And finally, another idea in this vein is that it can be very helpful to observe your own life and try to put some of the things you stress about into perspective. Questions like, are these things that I'm stressed about affecting my ability to eat? The fact that I have a roof over my head, my personal health? These big, broad questions. Is it affecting how I'm able to actually fulfill my basic needs is kind of what I'm saying here. And don't get me wrong, for many people, the answer is yes. And for those people, I think there's a lot more reason to be stressed about things like the economy or what have you. But I think taking that step back and asking, okay, how am I actually being affected? And is it affecting the basic needs that I have in life? This is a very nuanced thing. This isn't to say that you should never stress or that these big problems that people stress about are not problems. I'm not trying to minimize the problems. I'm just trying to have a conversation and try to give you all the capacity to assess the problem in your own life and decide how big of a problem is, and then take the requisite steps depending on your situation to help remediate that problem. And as technology and society advances, the things that we're stressed about do indeed change. Compared to a few hundred years ago, access to food is far less of an issue. A few hundred years ago, your next meal, your ability to survive through the winter, to have enough food through the winter, was something that people stressed about, and this had massive consequences. Lots of infant mortalities, lots of deaths in the winter, lots of people going hungry. And nowadays, obesity is the most common form of malnutrition in the world. So the modern world gives us some things to stress about for sure, but it's also solved a lot of the really, really pressing things that humanity has had to stress about before. Lifespan has gotten a lot longer as well. Health, even though many, many people are still unhealthy, has improved compared to a few hundred years ago. And I think this perspective is helpful. Again, not to minimize the issues, but simply to get perspective on them, and perhaps this perspective can help alleviate some of the stress. Stress is something that we all have to manage at some point in our lives. Perhaps we're managing it now. Perhaps you're a particularly stressed person. Perhaps you need to go to see a healthcare professional or a mental health professional. We're all at different stages of stress, but it is, for better or worse, part of the human condition. And lucky for us, for a good reason, stress can help us become more effective at the things that we put our minds to and intense tasks that require the best of us. However, we do need to be aware of when stress gets out of hand. And we need to be aware of when it goes into overdrive and when it has chronic long-term effects. After all, it can be very good in small doses, but in the long term, it can be bad news. And this is why learning about stress, learning about the sympathetic nervous system and how short-term stress can cause your body to quickly go into a state of fight or flight, and how this can be beneficial, but in the long term, not so much, or how you can have the hypothalamic pituitary axis, the HPA axis, release cortisol, and having long-term cortisol can perhaps be good leading up to a test, but in the long term, for months or years, it can have serious effects on your brain, your heart, your gut, your mental health, really everything in your body. And practicing mindfulness, working on improving areas of your life like sleep, relaxation, diet, and social connections, these things can all make a serious difference. And beyond that, being open to seeking a professional, like I said, can make a really, really big difference as well. If your stress seems like something too big to manage, that these things, even in small steps, seem impossible to overcome, then a therapist or going to your primary care or whatever you may need can be really, really helpful. I hope you all learned something today, be it how stress actually works in the body, or how to manage stress, or even how to change your mindset about stress in general, because for better or worse, we do all suffer from it at some point. So better to be prepared for it than not. But if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with friends and family. I appreciate it very much when you all do this, or leave comments or what have you, and make sure to subscribe. And I hope you all have a phenomenal day and have a very stress-free day. Peace.